When Jason Lloyd hinted that this saga might one day be a 30 for 30, it wasn't hyperbole, it was a warning. His exposé outlines a cover-up so intricate it borders on cinematic, manipulated media narratives, falsified injury updates, and a coaching staff forced into silence. Shedeur Sanders' supposed back injury became the perfect smokescreen.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
A story crafted to keep the public distracted while the Browns front office buried its dysfunction. Every setback and precautionary holdout wasn't about health, it was about optics. K.S. Lloyd's findings reveal a culture addicted to secrecy, where protecting the brand outweighs telling the truth. Stefanski's credibility has been gutted, and the trust between players and leadership is collapsing. The manipulation of Sanders' situation has become the franchise's most damning reflection. Proof that Cleveland's problems are no longer just football-related. They're systemic, intentional, and growing harder to conceal with each passing week. The story Lloyd unearthed isn't just scandal, it's a crisis of integrity. There's dysfunction, and then there's what's happening inside the Cleveland Browns. Thanks to Jason Lloyd, we now have confirmation of what many suspected but couldn't prove. This is not just a team struggling with on-field issues, it's a franchise drowning in sabotage, manipulation, and leadership failure. Lloyd's report is a straight-up indictment of the Browns' inner workings, and it centers on something far more serious than bad play calling or a losing record. This is about intentional sabotage, driven by fear at the highest levels of the organization. And the main casualty in this entire scandal? Shedeur Sanders. The Browns didn't draft a rookie quarterback, they drafted a scapegoat. A talented, capable quarterback who, according to Lloyd, has been systematically sidelined not because he can't play, but because his success would expose the incompetence of the people in. This isn't speculation. Lloyd, who's had years of inside access to the Browns' operations, came forward with a bombshell that strips away the carefully crafted PR narrative and shows exactly what's happening behind closed doors. At the heart of the mess is Kevin Stefanski, who has lost more control than the team is willing to admit. According to Lloyd, Stefanski has been stripped of his play-calling duties not once, but twice. Think about that. In the NFL, that doesn't happen to a head coach unless things are completely off the rails. It's a silent way of saying we don't trust you while still keeping someone in place to take the heat. And even with that massive vote of no confidence, he's still in the building, still pacing the sideline, still wearing the headset. Meanwhile, the actual decisions? They're being made by Jimmy Haslam and Andrew Berry, who have allegedly stepped in and taken over core coaching decisions. This isn't coaching. This isn't strategy. This is power hoarding. Jason Lloyd didn't just reveal dysfunction. He revealed intentional obstruction of player development, especially when it comes to Shedeur Sanders. Sanders isn't sidelined because of a serious injury. Lloyd called out the handling of his back issue as suspicious. The team flew him across the country for treatment, which they paraded as due diligence. But since then, Sanders has been kept off the field, despite reports that he's ready to go. And the injury narrative? According to Lloyd, it's being manipulated. It's a cover story, a distraction tactic to keep attention off the fact that the Browns don't want Sanders on the field. Because if he steps in and succeeds, it will shine a glaring spotlight on how badly this team has mismanaged the quarterback position for years. So what do they do instead? They spin. They leak. They control the narrative. They tell fans he's still progressing. They insist on protecting him. They say he's close, while weeks go by and nothing changes. It's not caution. It's suppression. Lloyd's report makes it clear. Sanders is being held back not for his own good, but to shield the front office from accountability. Because if he plays well, the current leadership loses all justification for their previous decisions. That includes missed draft picks, poor quarterback development, and a revolving door of systems that have gone nowhere. This is about protecting egos, not building a team. And it runs all the way to the top. Haslam and Berry aren't just mismanaging, they're micromanaging. They've created a culture where key decisions are made in secret meetings, behind the back of the coaching staff, and then disguised as strategic alignment. Meanwhile, the locker room sees what's happening. The players see Sanders putting in the work. They see the coaching staff operating without full control. And they see that performance isn't being rewarded, politics is. That's how a locker room erodes. That's how trust vanishes. You can't run a team like that and expect to succeed. This isn't just one quarterback being mismanaged. This is systematic, and it's been going on for longer than most people realize. Lloyd's revelations don't exist in a vacuum. They pull the curtain back on a franchise that has consistently prioritized narrative control over on-field results. Photos, and now that culture has cost them the confidence of one of the most promising young quarterbacks in the league. Let's talk about the bigger implications. If Shedeur Sanders continues to be sidelined, this scandal is going to grow louder. It's already moved past sports talk radio. The idea that this could become a 30 for 30 is not a joke. It's a reality. When your internal dysfunction is so extensive that insiders are predicting a documentary before the season's even over, you've officially lost the plot. The Browns have built a house of cards and Lloyd just knocked over the first one. And where do you go from here? If they play Sanders now and he performs, they've proven they were lying the entire time. If they keep him benched, they're continuing the cover-up. If they fire Stefanski, it's too late. If they try to shift blame to the media, no one's buying it. Every move from here forward is under a microscope. And if you're Sanders, what are you supposed to do? Stay in an organization that views you as a liability instead of a leader? Risk your development while the people above you fight to keep their power? Wait around while they use you as insurance for a PR strategy that's already collapsing? At what point do you take control of your career and walk away from the circus? This story is no longer just about the Browns. It's about the culture of fear that can take root inside any organization when power goes unchecked. When leadership stops being about vision and becomes about protectionism. Jason Lloyd said it plainly, this is one of the worst scandals in NFL history. Not because of what happened on the field, but because of what was done to keep a player off it. This is not normal. This is not strategic. This is corruption, plain and simple. And until someone in the building steps up and takes accountability, the Browns will remain exactly what they are right now, a franchise at war with itself. Let us know what you think. Should Shedeur demand a trade? Has the Browns' leadership destroyed all trust? How does a team even begin to recover from this kind of sabotage? Like, if you're done giving this front office the benefit of the doubt, share this with someone who still thinks this is all part of the plan, and subscribe, because the fallout isn't just coming. It's already here. There's no salvaging this quietly. The damage is done, the curtain is pulled back, and the franchise has been caught mid-spin cycle. The Browns can't backpedal out of this one. Not after Jason Lloyd's report laid bare the levels of manipulation, dysfunction, and internal sabotage working behind the scenes to stall the career of Shedeur Sanders. This isn't your average NFL scandal. This is the type of systemic rot that reshapes reputations, ends tenures, and forces sweeping changes, if the people in charge have the courage to face it. But that's the real problem here. They don't. Because if they did, Shedeur Sanders would be under center. He wouldn't be sidelined with no clear injury update. He wouldn't be traveling across the country for mysterious treatment. And he wouldn't be used as a pawn in a campaign to delay accountability. Let's just be honest, Shedeur is a threat. Not because he's disruptive. Not because he's outspoken. But because he's ready. He's talented, prepared, and perfectly capable of turning this team around. And that's exactly what terrifies the leadership. Because if he succeeds, then everything that's been swept under the rug, the failed draft picks, the coaching instability, the quarterback carousel, comes flooding back into focus. And no one in that building wants to answer for that. So instead of trusting their guy, they're stalling him. And here's where this gets even darker. According to Lloyd, the manipulation isn't limited to just holding Shedeur off the field. The team is actively crafting a narrative to protect itself. That includes leaking misleading injury reports, floating vague updates about progress, and building a media message that suggests he's simply not quite ready. But he is. And every time he doesn't play, the lie gets a little harder to sell. It's gotten so ridiculous that Lloyd is predicting a documentary will be made about it. A full-fledged 30 for 30 chronicling how one of the most promising quarterbacks in the league was blocked, not by defenders, but by the people who were supposed to believe in him. And let's be clear, this isn't an isolated decision made by one person. This is organizational. This is culture. This is the system itself working against its own future. Photos, you have Kevin Stefanski stripped of his play-calling responsibilities twice, still pretending to run the show. You have Andrew Berry, making personnel decisions while clearly trying to keep the quarterback situation under tight control. And you have Jimmy Haslam at the top, orchestrating this power play, not for the good of the team, but to preserve the illusion of competent leadership. At every level, the goal isn't to win. It's to maintain the hierarchy. This is what happens when your franchise becomes obsessed with optics instead of outcomes. You don't develop quarterbacks, you manage them like assets in a political chess game. You don't empower coaches, You neuter them so you can micromanage from the owner's suite. And when your plan starts to fall apart, you bury the one player who might actually save you. That's where we are. Shedeur Sanders isn't on the bench because he's recovering. He's on the bench because the people above him are afraid of what his success would expose. And the longer this goes on, the more it confirms exactly what Jason Lloyd laid out. This is sabotage, plain and simple. Let's talk about what this does to a team. When players see that talent doesn't earn opportunity, when they see that performance is secondary to politics, what message does that send? Why give your all if the guy next to you is getting blocked because the front office is insecure? Why trust the staff when coaching duties are being stripped and reassigned in secret? Why believe in a plan when it clearly has nothing to do with football? This is how locker rooms fracture. This is how organizations fall apart from the inside. The Browns are no longer a team chasing a championship. They're a franchise obsessed with self-preservation. And Shedeur Sanders? He's the inconvenient truth they can't afford to face. And let's not forget, this isn't just about one player being mishandled. Lloyd connected the dots to a broader pattern. This is a franchise that has failed repeatedly to build around any quarterback. That failure spans front office regimes. It spans coaching staffs. The difference now is that the cover is blown. The evidence is public. And it's clear that the problem isn't just talent evaluation, it's deliberate obstruction. And here's the chilling part. If they can do this to Shedeur Sanders, what's stopping other teams from doing it to their young talent? Jail. How many other rookies are stuck in similar power plays hidden behind PR strategies and development excuses? What Jason Lloyd uncovered goes beyond Cleveland. It's a warning about what happens when NFL franchises stop being teams and start being corporations, when the business of football becomes more about narrative control than wins. And unless someone breaks the cycle, Shedeur Sanders could become a cautionary tale. Not because he failed, but because the system around him was built to make sure he never got the chance. So where does this go from here? Can the Browns reverse course and hand Shedeur the reins? Maybe. But if they do, it won't be a victory, it'll be a confession. A quiet admission that the last few months were built on spin and fear. And if they don't? Then the pressure builds. The media keeps asking questions. The locker room keeps drifting. The fans keep demanding answers. And eventually Shedeur walks. Because he has options. And if this franchise doesn't want to build around him, someone else will. And when that happens, when Sanders thrives in another uniform, the full weight of this scandal will come crashing down. Because this isn't just about losing a season. This is about losing trust. Trust from the fans. Trust from the players. Trust from future free agents and draftees. The Browns haven't just mismanaged a quarterback, they've dismantled their credibility. So if you're still holding out hope that this is all part of some master plan, it's time to let that go. Jason Lloyd has shown us exactly what this is. It's not a plan. It's a cover-up. And every day Shedeur Sanders stays off the field, the lie gets harder to hide. There's only so long you can suppress a talent like Shedeur Sanders before the cracks begin to show. And at this point, the Cleveland Browns aren't just dealing with cracks. They're facing a full-blown collapse of trust, accountability, and legitimacy. Jason Lloyd didn't throw out vague criticism. He exposed a carefully calculated system of control that's now unraveling in front of the entire football world. The Browns thought they could quietly bury this situation under a pile of carefully worded injury reports and controlled leaks. But Lloyd pulled the thread, and what's unraveling is much bigger than a quarterback controversy. It's a franchise-wide meltdown, centered on power, ego, and a desperation to hide years of failure by those too scared to be exposed. Let's not forget the timeline. Sanders enters the organization with real buzz. Not just hype. For once, the Browns had a quarterback with pedigree, skill, and leadership qualities that could unify a fractured locker room. And what did the franchise do? They shelved him. Not because he wasn't ready. Not because he was injured in a way that made playing impossible. But because the people upstairs were terrified that he was ready. Because if Shedeur Sanders steps onto the field and lights it up, then what? Then all the deflection, all the quarterback confusion, all the coaching carousel excuses, none of it holds up anymore. His success would be a mirror they can't bear to look into. So instead of giving the fans what they begged for and the team what it desperately needs, they've kept him boxed away, wrapped in caution tape and corporate spin. Jason Lloyd flat out said what others were too afraid to. Shedeur isn't on the bench due to injury, he's on the bench because playing him would force the Browns to admit the truth. And this truth? It's not just uncomfortable, it's damning. It reveals that Kevin Stefanski, while still paraded out as the head coach, has been effectively neutered. Twice stripped of his play-calling duties, twice. and yet still standing on the sideline as if he's steering the ship. Let's call that what it is, a prop. A shield. Someone for the front office to hide behind while they quietly control the actual decisions. You don't strip your coach's authority multiple times and still claim to have a stable culture. That's a coaching staff in name only. And it begs the question, if Stefanski isn't trusted to call plays, if his hands are tied behind his back, then who's really calling the shots? The answer, according to Lloyd, is ownership and upper management, specifically Jimmy Haslam and Andrew Barry. And they're not making decisions based on winning football games. They're making decisions based on optics, on preserving their own power, their image, and the narrative they've worked so hard to control. They didn't want Shedeur Sanders to save the team. They wanted him to stay quiet, stay sidelined, and stay useful, as long as he didn't threaten the structure they've built around themselves. Let that sink in. This isn't a rookie who showed up unprepared. This isn't a player dealing with a serious injury. This is a quarterback who, by all accounts, is ready to lead. And instead of unleashing him, they sent him to doctors across the country, delayed his return, kept the media in the dark, and told fans to trust the process. The process of what? Wasting his rookie year to protect the people who failed the last 4 quarterbacks before him? Because that's what this is, an attempt to cover up a decade's worth of failure by ensuring the next guy doesn't succeed too quickly. That way, no one has to answer for why it took this long to get it right. And let's talk about the human cost. Shedeur Sanders isn't just a name in a depth chart. He's a 21-year-old athlete with everything to prove and everything to lose. He's put in the work. He said the right things. And still, he's stuck watching games from the sideline while less qualified players get trotted out to protect a crumbling leadership narrative. That does damage. Mentally. Professionally. It chips away at the confidence of a player who came into the league with clear vision and now finds himself trapped in a system that doesn't want him to win. Not yet. Because winning exposes the people who've been losing in secret for years. And it's not just about him. This is a culture issue. When one player is sacrificed to maintain an illusion, it tells every other player in that locker room that the scoreboard doesn't matter as much as the status quo. That success will be policed. That timing will be controlled. That no matter how ready you are, the decision to let you lead will depend on how threatened the people upstairs feel by your presence. That's how you poison a team. You think veterans don't notice this? You think agents aren't watching how Sanders is being handled? You think free agents don't ask around about how decisions are really made in Cleveland? This is how reputations are destroyed, not in blowouts or losing records, but in intentional silence. In secret meetings. In injury reports designed not to inform but to mislead. In leadership that values image more than outcomes. The Browns had a chance to turn the page. They had a moment where they could have finally shown that the organization was ready to grow up, move forward, and let talent, not politics, lead the way. But instead they went back to the same playbook. Stall, deflect, and control the message. And now that message is out of their hands. Because thanks to Jason Lloyd, the media knows. The fans know. And worst of all, Shedeur knows. He knows he's not being held back for development. He's being managed for someone else's survival. And when a player starts to see that his career is a bargaining chip in a boardroom, you don't get that trust back. Not ever. So where does this end? If they keep benching Sanders, it's a slow, humiliating drip of public pressure and internal collapse. If they finally start him, every snap becomes a reminder that they lied for weeks about his readiness. There is no clean exit here. Only consequences. If Shedeur plays lights out, then the front office gets exposed. If he struggles, then they'll say, "See? We were right to wait," ignoring the fact that they created the unstable foundation he's now trying to stand on. There's no winning for him as long as this leadership structure remains in place. And maybe that's the plan. Keep him boxed in just long enough to take the heat off themselves, then shift the narrative again. We've seen it before. It's not new. But it is disgraceful. This isn't how you build a team. It's how you build resentment. It's how you fracture a culture. And it's how you lose the kind of player who could have redefined your franchise. So what's next? More damage control? Another vague press conference about taking it week by week? Or will someone finally step up, tell the truth, and fix this before it turns into a legacy-defining failure? Because at this point, silence is complicity. Every day Sanders sits, it's another endorsement of the chaos. And eventually it'll be too late to fix. This isn't just a messy chapter in the Browns' history. It's the beginning of their unraveling, again. And this time it's different. Because this time they can't hide behind poor drafting, bad luck, or rebuilding excuses. This time, someone on the inside said the quiet part out loud. Lloyd didn't speculate. He exposed. He peeled back the layers of a franchise that has spent more time protecting reputations than preparing quarterbacks. And he named names. Haslam, Barry, Stefanski. All of them playing a role in a machine that isn't designed to win. It's designed to survive. Even if that means keeping one of the most NFL-ready rookie quarterbacks in the country locked out of his own opportunity. And here's the part they'll never say out loud. They thought they could get away with it. They thought if they slow-played it, if they dropped a few quotes about development, if they threw in a handful of ambiguous medical updates, fans would stop asking questions. That the media would move on. That Sanders himself would stay quiet. But now, it's spiraling. You can't control the narrative when the truth is this loud. There's no walking this back. No clean pivot. If they start Sanders now, it's too obvious. They've been caught. If they don't, the backlash grows. Every snap he doesn't take is another reminder of the cover-up. Every vague quote is another insult to a fanbase that's been loyal through decades of dysfunction. At some point, even the most dedicated fans start asking, what exactly are we supporting? Because this isn't development. This isn't patience. This is a franchise sabotaging its future out of fear of its past. And the worst part is how preventable it all was. They had the guy. They had the chance. And instead of building around him, they boxed him out. They chose preservation over progression. Ego over evolution. It's the most Cleveland Browns thing ever, and also the most avoidable. The franchise that could have turned a corner has instead drawn a line in the sand. And standing alone on the other side of it is Shedeur Sanders. Ready. Waiting. Watching. If they don't let him play soon, they won't just lose games. They'll lose him. And they'll lose whatever credibility they had left in the eyes of fans, players, and the entire league. So now the Browns have a decision to make. Let Shedeur lead, and admit everything. Or keep pretending and watch the story write itself into NFL infamy. Comment below, should Sanders stay patient or walk away? Can the Browns fix this, or is it already too late? Like if you've had enough of the silence. Share it with someone still waiting for a trust the process moment. And subscribe, because if this is just the middle, the ending might be even more brutal.